You've answered my second question already, so that is
Yeah.
awesome. Dr. Chaffee, I could listen to you talk all day, man. Jesus, like constantly learning from you. It's amazing. And one point that I wanted to touch on is my own experience with the carnivore diet. Beforehand, I would say like a year ago or so, I was with that mindset of just cutting the calories. I weighted 105 kilos, by the way, and
Oh,
I'm weighing 85 right now. But
yeah,
I
nice.
lost all the way up to 75. But a lot of that I was just like calories in, calories out. I was eating 1,200 calories a day. That's nothing. It's nothing. And I went from a standard American diet, and I've realized that I'm a big responder of like just cutting on the calories. And then I got very lean, like I was jacked. I was like bang, bang. I could have. I was drinking beer too, and it wasn't affecting me because I wasn't eating as much. But then when I started the carnivore diet, then I started to gain weight because I was eating whatever. I was like, I'm gonna eat until I'm full, and I'm gonna be good. And then I started gaining weight, so I went up to 87 kilograms. A lot of it, a lot of it was muscle, but
Hmm.
some of it was fat as well. And like I was like, that's okay. That's what I'm supposed to eat. One day my body will be okay with it, and then my weight is gonna drop again. And I've been dropping 85, 84, 85 kilograms right now. So
Hmm.
and I'm shedding fat as well. But the question that I was gonna tell you is the all the hormones matter as well, right? Because
Hmm.
I cut the so-called calories so much that my body was not used to eating as much food. So how much impact does the hormones have on me gaining that fat? But now I'm shedding because I guess I'm eating what I'm supposed to eat and my body is healed. I don't know. I don't know. That's my question
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah, no, no, definitely, and that's great that you stuck with it, right? Because it's some people just lose weight like that, and their fat's just dropping off, and they're putting on muscle, and it's great. That was my response. I just started just shredding fat and stacking on muscle. I lost weight initially quite a lot, 23 pounds in 10 days, and then I didn't lose anything for months, but my body composition was changing. I knew that I was putting on muscle and losing fat because I could visibly see it, and I was working hard. I was working out a lot, so that didn't bother me. I knew that my body composition was changing, and that's really the important thing. Weight is not important. Body composition is important. Your health is most important, though. So that's what I always tell people. Number one is your health. How do you feel? How are you doing? Are you coming off your medications? Are you feeling better? You have better energy? Are you better? That's the important thing. That's what you want to fix. Everything else will follow. And then a very distant second is body composition. And then nowhere on that is the scale, right? Because the scale can't tell you anything about your health or your body composition, right? And those are the only two things that actually matter. So some people respond very quickly. Other people take a bit of time. And especially when you're calorie restricting, when you're starving yourself, yeah, you can starve yourself into, smaller clothing size. It happens all the time. Again, look at the concentration camps. It works. We have the starvation studies out of Minnesota in World War II that found, yeah, you can starve the hell out of people and they'll lose a lot of weight, but then it'll plateau. It'll sort of stop, and you're feeding people basically an amount of food that should kill them, but they're able to survive and actually not lose any more weight because their metabolism slows down so significantly because they're saying, okay, we're in a famine, we're not have access to food, so we just need to shut down the metabolism and just work with what we got. And that's fine. Your body can do that for a while. All animals, all life can manage a famine, or else they'd be dead, because at some point every species has had to, certainly the multicellular organisms have had to face famines, some droughts or famines or something like that. And so if you can't weather that, you're going to die, and your species is going to die out. And a lot have. 97% of all life on Earth is now extinct, right? So we're the survivors, and we're descended from the survivors that definitely went through famine. So your metabolism shuts down and your hormones change in such a way. I mean, your reverse T3 can go up and your thyroid starts, shutting down. So your metabolism starts shutting down because your body's saying, hey, we don't want to just burn energy for the sake of it. We need to conserve this, right? And, depending on what you're eating, your insulin can be going up. Your leptin will definitely go up. And that's really just your body compensating for a famine. And then when you start actually eating properly, and this is why people do yo-yo diets, right? Because you're starving yourself for a long time. It's not sustainable. You can't do this forever. And eventually you just go, okay, I'm just gonna eat something. And because the thing is too, is again, just like in the Minnesota starvation trials, it ends up plateauing. And so sometimes people, they've lost a bunch of weight, but then they plateau. They're not losing weight anymore. They feel like garbage. They hate their life. They're hungry all the time. They're not well because they're malnourished. And then they go, okay, well, I'll just go back to eating normally. And they just go back to eating what they were before, and they actually have a rebounding effect, and they actually regain more weight than they lost because their metabolism is so screwed. They saw this in the what was it called? Biggest Loser, that show, The Biggest Loser, where it was the classic, just eat 2 lima beans and a celery stalk and just crush yourself on the treadmill, and that's how you lose weight. Okay. So they lost weight, but they destroyed their metabolism. So they checked their basal metabolic rate, and it was absolutely just bottomed out by the end of the contest. They checked them 6 years later. Basically, everyone had regained the weight, and none of their metabolisms had recovered. They all had horrible metabolisms still. So what I encourage my patients to do is, again, eat until it stops tasting good. Let your body do the talking, and encourage your body and tell it that there is no famine. You're not starving, because your body doesn't know that you just want to lose weight. Your body's working on inputs. There's not like some intelligence just hanging back in your metabolism going, oh yeah, they're just trying to, cut down weight for their wedding or something like that. Or, oh, it's bikini season. No, that's not what, it doesn't know that, right? It's just reacting to inputs. And so the input that you're giving it is there's no food available, because any animal in the wild, if it had its preferred food in front of it and it was hungry, it would eat. And so it's getting those hunger signals, it's telling you to eat, and you're not eating. That means it's not available. That's the input that you're giving it. And so it says, okay, it's not available. We're in a famine. This has been going on too long. We need to shut down the metabolism. And then when you start eating again, it goes, right, well, that was terrible. We don't know when our next meal is coming. We don't know when the famine is going to end. So we need to store fat. I mean, it's just like your body's just very fiscally responsible. It's like if you get your hours cut at work, or you go to part-time or something like that, that's a really bad time to start blowing out your spending and draining your savings account. You need to, trim sales and make that last as long as possible, because, you may be out on the streets otherwise, right? And so when you get into a better job situation, you start making more money again. Sure, you can go out and buy a brand new car and like, oh, I deserve this. Most people are shook up enough by that they go like, you know what, I'm just saving from now on, and I'm going to get to a healthy nest egg because I don't want to go through that again. And so I want to become more financially secure in case that happens again. And that's what your body's doing. You've been starving yourself for a long period of time, and your body's saying, well, that sucked. We need to store up, because obviously we could come into that again. We do this every winter. We used to do this every winter. Winters were lean. And so your body just said, whoop, that was horrible. Okay, we need to store up for the next winter. And so that's what you do. You do these yo-yos, these yo-yo diets. And so when you go onto a carnivore, I tell people, eat a lot, eat until it stops tasting good. Don't eat too much. Just listen to your body. If you're eating what you're supposed to eat, you should be able to listen to your body's signals, like every single animal on earth. There's no other animal on earth that goes to college, and yet we're the only ones that can't figure out what the hell to eat or how much. Like, obviously there's something wrong with us, right? And the education. And so I say, encourage your metabolism. Encourage your body to say, we're not in a famine. We've got everything we need. You don't need to hold on to this. And so we typically see exactly what you experienced, which, you might actually gain weight for a little bit. Most people don't, but you were starving yourself. And a lot of people that are starving themselves and eating way too little, you're telling your body you're in a famine. And so when you go back to start eating real food, your body is going to store that. And then after a while, when your hormones start adjusting, your metabolism starts adjusting, your body trusts you and goes, okay, I think we're good now. We'll lower the barriers and we'll raise your metabolism. That's when you start losing fat. And so that is typically what we find. But and it's typically the people that have been doing the starvation yo-yo diets that may have a delay in when they start losing body fat, just because their metabolism takes time to heal. But it does happen. You can track this by a number of means. Fasting insulin, but really leptin is a really good marker of this. That's a satiety hormone. When you get leptin resistance and that starts elevating, you see someone with elevated leptin, especially very high leptin, that can be an indication that it might be difficult for someone to lose weight. Not everyone does, but a lot of people do. And if your leptin goes over 100, for instance, bariatric surgeons will say you can't actually lose weight unless you get bariatric surgery. You will not be able to lose weight, but you can. They say you can't do it with diet and starvation and fasting. You can't do that, and that's true. But you can do it with the right diet. You can do it with a proper human diet. It just takes time, because you go on a ketogenic carnivore diet, and I track people's leptins all the time. I always check my patients' leptins when they're struggling to lose weight, and they go on a ketogenic carnivore diet, and that leptin just comes down, 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 and eventually it comes down enough, and that's when woof, they start losing weight like crazy. I actually had a lady that just came in to see me a couple weeks ago before I went to speak at a couple conferences in Europe and elsewhere. And it's a classic example of this. So I saw her back in August, and she had already been carnivore for 3 months. She just wanted to see me to make sure that she was doing it right, check her labs, and make sure that things were all shipshape. So she'd already been carnivore for 3 months. We checked her leptin. It was 86, right? So over 100, and weight loss surgeons will say, no chance in hell that you can lose weight with diet alone, right? So she was likely over 100 when she started, almost certainly. She wasn't losing weight, but she knew that. She knew that some people didn't lose weight right away, so she was going to be patient. She was focusing on her health and how she felt, and she'd been obese since she was a child. She said nothing has ever worked for her, so she's just going to be patient. She's just going to keep doing this. She liked eating that way. It wasn't a problem for her, so she's just going to keep doing it. So I checked her. I saw her once every month. We checked her bloods and all these sorts of things. And I said, look, you keep doing this. This is how your bloods are going to change, and we'll check those again in a few months. Every month there was not much difference. There was maybe, a kilo or two every month. There was a bit of weight loss, but it was sort of like, it was even making me like, oh, I really wish you'd see more weight loss, because that's what a lot of people see. But she was fine, she wasn't getting discouraged. And
how
then
heavy
around,
was she initially?
So she was bigger. She was probably around 130 kilos when she started. So she was, she was quite overweight. And then around February, she all of a sudden came in. She just visibly looked different. And put her on the scale. She'd lost 16 kilos in a month. So she went 1 or 2 kilos, 1 or 2 kilos, 1 or 2 kilos, 1 or 2 kilos for about 8 months. And then bam, 16 kilos in a month. And the next month she lost another 8 kilos, and she's just been steadily losing it off. She just looks like a different person now. It's a completely different person now. And she was crying when she saw me. She's like, nothing else has ever worked for me. This is the only thing that has ever worked. And I'm not hungry. I'm not starving. I'm not hurting myself. I'm not sick. I feel great. I feel better than I ever have before. And I'm losing weight. This is amazing. And we checked her leptin. And what do you know? It went from 86 down to 21, right? And so that went down enough, and all of a sudden, weight started coming off. So that's what we see, is that we mess up our bodies, we mess up our metabolism, we screw up our hormones, but they're a natural response to the inputs we're giving them. We're telling our bodies that we're starving and we're eating substandard food, and our bodies are just trying to help us survive. And this is how it survives. And so when we go back to a normal human diet, it can just take time to undo that. But it does happen, and people get absolutely fantastic results.
I'm not gonna lie, I got chills from the story, Dr. Chaffee.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing, and I bet
Oh,
you have
good.
a lot more stories about people that changed their life. But I wanted to finish because we're at 1 hour and 11 minutes now, and I only asked you for 1 hour of your time.
It's all good.
But
It's all
so
right.
sorry about that. We went a little over, but I just got two more questions to you, if that's okay.
Mhm. Sure.
Yeah, so the first one is you said eat fatty meat until stop tasting good, right? You always say
Mhm.
that. I always say that as well. I've copied from you. I'm not gonna lie.
Mhm.
If you want
No,
some
it's good.
copyright, I'll give it to you.
No, you're fine.
Well,
No, it's
I
good.
say that in Portuguese a lot to people as well. But one question that I do have is how about like right before bed? Because we've heard a lot that eating before bed it's not good because you're gonna go to bed and whatever. How does that spike in insulin? Because we might have a spike in insulin if we eat enough protein. Is
Mhm.
that bad right before bed?
Insulin can be bad because insulin will interrupt your melatonin. Insulin will also block growth hormone. Growth hormone is maximally secreted 2 hours after you go to sleep, as long as you go to sleep on time. And that's another part of this, right? This is all about optimal health. So it's not just about what you eat. I think we're eating such garbage that, changing to an optimal diet makes a massive, massive, massive improvement. However, there are so many other things that play in, and sleep is very important as well. And so if you're going to sleep late, if you're off your circadian rhythm, you actually won't get that big hit of growth hormone after you go to sleep, which is actually a big deal. And that's something that I do see. I see people's growth hormone and testosterone for men improving dramatically. And that's one of the things people say is it's like, oh, you don't want to do all this meat because your growth hormone will go up, your IGF will go up, you'll get cancer. Well, look at people with high IGF-1, look at people with gigantism and acromegaly because they have a pituitary tumor. They have no increased incidence of cancers above that of the rest of the population. So no, that's not a thing. One thing is that some cancers exhibit an increase in IGF-1 early on, like some breast cancers. One of the first signs of some breast cancers is a elevated IGF-1. So that's not, but you're getting the cart before the horse. They're saying that the IGF-1 caused the breast cancer. No, it didn't. The breast cancer caused the high IGF-1. And so, IGF-1, and some people even said that IGF-1 and growth hormone actually make you age faster. It's the exact opposite. That stuff that is what keeps you young. In fact, when your IGF-1, your growth hormone start coming down, that's when you start aging more quickly because IGF-1 and growth hormone help you grow, obviously, and hence the name growth hormone. But it does so many other things. It's just basically tissue rebuilding and repair and keeping your tissue healthy, young, and vibrant and active. And the lower that goes, the quicker you age. Basically, you don't want too much, but you want a physiological level. And I see people going back to more physiological levels just by eating properly. It's actually quite impressive how much they improve. They never go too high. They just go to the right level or approach the right level. But if you eat carbohydrates, insulin will go up. Insulin blocks the action of growth hormone, which can reduce because growth hormone goes to your liver and stimulates IGF-1 production or IGF production in your liver, right? And so if you have high insulin, that can block that. And so you'll have less active growth hormone. You won't have as much IGF-1, and you will have the knock-on effect from there. As far as eating meat goes, when you're only eating protein in isolation and you're not eating protein with carbohydrates, you do get an insulin bump, but it's very minor. It's very minor, especially compared to a carbohydrate bump. If you're eating carbohydrates with protein, you get a much larger bump in insulin from that protein. So if you look at the different indices on how much certain things affect insulin, typically they're looking at these things in combination. So the protein does X, but that's looking at it when you're eating protein along with carbohydrates. So studies have been done where they look at protein in isolation from carbohydrates. And it does increase insulin a bit, but only a small amount, just enough to get that protein properly stored into the cells. So I don't worry too much about that. I think the major issue is carbohydrates before bed. If you look again in the wild, and we look at our friends out in the nature videos and things like that, you look at like other carnivores and lions, they take down a kill, they eat that kill, they fill up, and then they pass out for 14 hours, right? You go into a rest and digest mode, your body's saying, hey, shut down, you've gotten your energy for the day, relax, conserve energy, because your body is very efficient. This is why your metabolism comes right down if you're not eating enough, because your body is efficient. It has to be efficient or you're going to die. You can't waste energy out in the wild, because most of the time you're dealing with famines, not surpluses, right? And so that's your body's naturally telling you to do that. And people will see this. If you eat a big meal during the day for breakfast or lunch, you're just going to be lethargic and just dragging for the next several hours. And you're just like, I do this sometimes. Before I learned my lesson, I'd eat a bit more than I should. If I have like a half meal, it's okay. But if I was like, I'm just gonna eat as much as I want to. I mean, for the rest of the day, I'm just dying. I'm like, oh my God, I just want to crawl under my desk and take a nap. And normally I have great energy, and I don't want to work out after go to the gym after work and things like that. But if I eat just a smaller amount, then it's better. And that's just that natural instinct that your body is telling you to conserve energy. You've got your food for the day. Why are you running around wasting it? Just take it easy and conserve energy. So I don't think that it's as big of a deal. Actually, I don't think it's a big deal at all, really, on a carnivore diet. I think it's a pretty natural state to eat and then go to bed, go to sleep afterwards. One argument you can make is that if you go to bed on a full stomach, when your stomach is empty, your stretch receptors release ghrelin, and ghrelin can actually stimulate more growth hormone. But this is one of the reasons that like intermittent fasting or just not eating constantly throughout the day and letting your ghrelin build up and then just having enough in one go could be an advantage, or one of the mechanisms why IGF-1 and growth hormone tend to go up, apart from just cutting out the carbs and lowering your insulin, is that if your ghrelin is up, that can stimulate growth hormone as well. So that's one argument, is that if you go to bed and your stomach is empty, you may have a bit more ghrelin, you may have a bit more of a growth hormone boost. However, ghrelin doesn't necessarily come on just immediately after your stomach's down. Sometimes it can take hours or even like a day to build up, and you get that hunger state. You're like, yes, I'm hungry now. That's when that ghrelin is up. So, I'm not entirely convinced it's as big of a deal as all of that. But either way, if it's something that you're concerned about, I'm not too worried about it. I typically eat before I go to bed. Pure logistics. I have no other option. I work all day, and I work until late, 7, 8 o'clock at night on a normal day, and that's without being on call or anything like that. Not really doing on calls at this point. I'm just in my private practice, but thank God. And but then I do interviews, and I do consultations and things like that online, and I could be going to 11, 12 o'clock at night. Because I come straight home from work, and then I'm on doing interviews and meetings and things like that, and I eat after that, and I'm not going to wait around 3 hours for that to empty out and then go to bed. I'm not going to do that. I need to go to bed. So I'm eating it at 11 or 12, and I'm going to bed right after that, and that works for me. So if someone's really concerned about it and they want to make sure that their insulin is nice and low, sure, just eat later in the day, but not directly before bed. You could do that, but I don't worry too much about it. I think it's perfectly reasonable and pretty consistent with what we see with predators in the wild.
Yeah, I mean that's my line of thought as well. I've realized that if I eat anything, as a small steak as possible, I get so tired after I eat it that I'm like, what? I don't want to work. I don't want to do anything. And then what I've been trying to do as time goes on and my hunger is decreasing is do just like you intuitively, just eat after I'm done working. But like you, I'm just done working at 9, 10 p.m. So I'm working to get to that point, but hopefully someday I will. And I do get so tired after I eat whatever. And I've been trying to find a solution to not get tired. And my solution so far is just not to eat until the night.
Yeah.
And and my last question to you, Dr. Chaffee, would be just asking you to tell you for you to tell some some feedback from your patients that you've gotten so far in your, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years of practice, telling people to eat a carnivore diet. What's like some very nice stories that you could tell us to end the interview with a golden key?
Yeah. So, well, I've been part of the practice that I'm in now a bit indirectly for about 5 years, and then as a full-time clinician for around 2 years now, and then part-time before that. I would just basically, when I was working in neurosurgery, full-time in neurosurgery, it was very demanding as far as time is concerned. But any days off I had, I would go in and I would go into the clinic and I would teach people up the carnivore diet and try to help them with that and educate people, and I would see fantastic results. So we've had patients that have been doing a carnivore diet in our clinic for upwards of 5 years now, which is great. We have reversed diseases that are thought to be irreversible, these non-communicable chronic diseases that are said to be, we don't know what causes them, we don't know what stops them, we don't know what cures them. All we can do is treat them symptomatically, and it's about $10,000 a month for some of these treatments. It's pretty wild. Not all of them, but some of them are very expensive. And they go away, largely. And a lot of these things, like Hashimoto's thyroiditis is an autoimmune issue that attacks the thyroid and causes hypothyroidism and eventually kills the thyroid, and you have to actually surgically resect it, or else it's a cancer risk, because it can turn cancerous. It's not working, it's defunct, and it's getting all these signals to grow and do things, and it can't work properly, and it just turns into cancer. And also the things that you're doing to cause that problem in the first place probably aren't helping your risk of cancer either. But that and other autoimmune issues, from what I can tell, is really our body reacting negatively to these plant toxins and other sorts of toxins that get in our body, and you're making antibodies towards them. And those antibodies then cross-react with our own tissue. And the thought was, probably still is, in people besides me and the people who know about it, is that you get molecular mimicry and then you get a sensitization. So you attack like a virus or something, or maybe lectins or some sort of plant toxin. And then that's close enough to something on our own cells and our own tissue that it sort of sticks to that, it attacks that. And then how our immune system works is it becomes more and more sensitive and specific for something, and then it attacks it more and more and more. But that never really made sense to me. Because I took postgraduate immunology in my undergrad, before I went to medical school, and it was very clear. The cells that make antibodies, and your immune cells in general, the specific ones that make these sorts of attack these specific antigens, they're matured in your bone marrow and your thymus to test against every single antigen in your body, every single protein and molecule and chemical, everything in your body that you make is tested against these new cells. And if they react even slightly, they're killed. So they're never released into the system unless they won't react to your body at all. So that didn't make sense to me, that you could then sensitize your body to that, because the ones that had the ability to do that were all weeded out, right? So what makes more sense is that your body is getting attacked by these plant toxins and other sorts of things, and they're sticking onto different parts of your body, and your body's attacking that complex, and your body's getting hit in the crossfire. And that's actually something that Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride, who wrote the GAPS diet, has theorized as well. That makes a lot more sense to me. Either way, you're not sensitizing yourself to your own body. Again, because your immune system just doesn't really work like that, but also because that does not explain the observed phenomena. Because if that were to happen, you would just make more and more antibodies, more and more specific antibodies, more and more aggressive antibodies towards your body until that organ was dead and it would not come back. But when you stop eating plants and you just go on a pure red meat and water carnivore diet, those antibodies go down and they go away. So your body's reacting to those toxins and making antibodies towards those toxins. And then when you remove those toxins, those antibodies stop getting made. So it's very simple. So you're not actually sensitized to it, because if there was something still in your body that your body was sensitive to and still attacking, eating differently isn't going to affect that, right? And this is something that Dr. J. Salisbury figured out in the 1800s, was that you could cure autoimmune issues and other sorts of diseases and actually help people recover from tuberculosis and gout by putting them on a pure beef and water diet. So this was actually being treated for rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, other sorts of autoimmune issues since the 1800s. And this is in the literature. And people have done this for another century after that. And then they said, oh, cholesterol's bad, meat's bad, everyone eat plants, and just threw out 100 years of medical science and knowledge and experiment, right? So I see this in real life, in practice, and there are actually studies that back this up too. That probably take too long to get into, but I have a YouTube video on autoimmune disease called what they don't want you to know about autoimmune diseases, and probably is someone holding this stuff back because it's big money. So the main thing is that when you put this in practice, it works. And you put people on a pure red meat and water diet, their antibodies go down. And I track this, because you can track certain antibodies. Not all of them, but you can track certain antibodies like Hashimoto's. You get a number. And so you have your TPO antibodies and your TG antibodies. I measure these things, and they just come down. They take a while to come down, especially for Hashimoto's, but they do come down. And their symptoms come down, and their thyroid starts to improve, and they start coming off their medication, or at least reducing their medication. Some people can actually come off fully off their medication. And others may have permanently damaged their thyroid to the point that it can't recover, and so they'll need to be on lifelong medication, but at least it's not continuing the damage. And so, I had a lady that had her TPO antibodies were 650, her TG was 50, 8 months on a lion diet, just beef and water. And her TPO was down to 50 from 650, and her TG was trace. They couldn't even, it was undetectable, right? That doesn't happen. That's not supposed to happen. She was on no medications. She was on no medications to lower her antibodies or alter her immune system, or low dose naltrexone or anything like that. She was just doing diet. And her antibodies are just coming right down, and her thyroid is starting to improve. And so we have over 100 Hashimoto's patients. Every single one that is able to adhere to a red meat and water diet improves dramatically, and their antibodies all come down. People with Crohn's disease typically will improve symptomatically within a matter of weeks. They can be asymptomatic within a month. And in 3 months, I have never seen anyone at a 3-month colonoscopy biopsy show any signs of inflammation. I haven't seen a single person, if they're able to stick to it and just do red meat and water. And lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis. I've had patients that were wheelchair bound because of their multiple sclerosis attacking their nervous system and causing lesions on their spinal cord and causing them to be wheelchair bound and not be able to care for themselves. And now they're walking around. One lady I interviewed on my podcast, she wasn't my patient, but she did this independently. And she went from being in a wheelchair to 6 months later, she was back doing ballet. And she was in her early 30s, and she was basically dying. Her disease was so advanced and accelerating. It was so aggressive that she was likely going to die if she didn't do anything about it. and now she's perfectly normal. And and on MRI, her lesions are reducing. So, sort of maybe leave you with a heartwarming story. There was a lady who's, her doctor who's treating her MS was very much against her changing her diet. Didn't think it was a good idea. Thought that it would, if it did anything, it would hurt her. And she said, "No, I'm going to try this. There are people doing this, and they're doing really, really well with it." And he thought it was a bad idea. The medications were really giving her a hard time, and she felt really bad with them. But she started feeling a lot better with the diet. She said, "Look, I'm going to come off the medications because they're just too much. They're just destroying my health. They're incredibly expensive, and I don't want to do them anymore." And he yelled at her and said that she was being reckless with her health, that she would be crippled within 10 years. She'd probably die, and if she didn't continue on with the medication. Now, I'm sure that he meant well, and in his experience, this was the only thing that delayed the progression of these diseases, and he was very worried for her, I'm sure, but he did it in such a way that really upset her, made her cry, and she was so upset, and she was just like, "Jesus, am I killing myself? What am I doing?" But she's, just said, "You know what? No, I've been getting better. I'm feeling better. I'm going to trust myself on this, and I've seen a lot of people get better, so I'm going to do this." And she kept doing it. She kept getting better. She kept improving. She saw him again another 6 months later with an MRI this time, and now she's symptom free. She has no symptoms. She's basically symptomatically in remission from her multiple sclerosis, and her MRI is showing resolution of her lesions. And so her lesions, which are these damaged areas of the myelination of your axons and your nerves and your spinal cord, can hit anywhere in your white matter, they were resolving. They were getting better. They were going away. So objectively, she was getting better. It wasn't just subjectively. It wasn't that she thought she felt better. She was better. She was getting better. Her nerves were healing. Her brain and her body and her spinal cord were recovering. And her doctor even said, I've never seen this. I can't explain this. I don't know what's going on. You're not even on the medication, and the medication doesn't reverse this. It just helps slow down the progression, but it gets worse generally. And this is getting better, and I don't know why. And she said, "Well, do you think it might be because of the diet? I mean, that's the only thing I'm doing differently, and I'm not taking the medication." He said, "No, absolutely not." And so she said, "Right." And so she said, "Yeah, never going back to see him again." And that's when she just came and saw me and just said, "Look, I'm feeling great. I just want you to make sure that my bloods look good and that I'm not missing anything." "Yeah, happy to, no problem." But yeah, so that was an amazing story for her, because she really revolutionized her health and took charge of her own health and the direction of her own disease course, and basically made it so she didn't have a disease anymore. Because it's not a disease, it's a toxicity. It's a toxic buildup of a species inappropriate diet and a lack of species specific nutrition. And some of those toxins react in our body in such a way that we react to them and make an immune response that then attacks our body. And so it's a deeper level and layer, but it still comes from the same thing. We're eating things we're not supposed to. We're getting a toxic exposure. Our body's trying to fight it off, and we're getting sick. And so you just get rid of the toxin. The toxicity goes away. It's really that simple. It is exactly that simple. And she's living proof of that. And I have hundreds and hundreds of patients who are also living proof. And those are my patients who I check their bloods, and I can objectively track the progression of their disease or the resolution of their disease. And I mean, diabetes, that just goes away. That's just a no-brainer. Everybody that comes in with insulin resistance and elevated blood sugar goes away, like nearly within the month. That will just resolve. And so these are all testaments to that. And no one can take that away. You get these people online saying, "Oh, well, this is all anecdotal." No, it's not. This is clinical evidence. This is the clinical experience of thousands of doctors around the world. Now people are publishing on this. Dr. David Unwin in the UK has published multiple case series of his patient populations on how many people have reversed these diseases. I'll be publishing different case series of my patient populations as well. This is not anecdotal. This is the clinical experience. This is the real world results that are happening. And so it's not just people on the internet saying, "Oh, I got better," and who knows if they did or not. These are my patients who I've seen their numbers and will be publishing on them, and it works. And people's diseases are going away. And it's the first time it's the second time we've figured that out. It's the first time with the internet where we can broadly disseminate the information so we don't forget it this time, that you can actually cure these diseases by fixing your diet, that these diseases are caused by diet. It's the second time we figured this out, because the first time was with Dr. J.H. Salisbury in the 1800s, who wrote a book called The Relation of Alimentation and Disease. Alimentation is our digestion, right? So the relationship of what we eat and the diseases we get. And he said it over 100 years ago, well over 100 years ago, that eating these foods cause these non-communicable chronic diseases, and you can reverse them by just not eating them anymore. And so thankfully, we figured that out again. And we're trying to disseminate that to as many people as possible. And it's working. And it's working for clinicians. It's working for independent people. It's just working in general. And the more we can get this information out to people, the more people will take this on board and help themselves. And the less diseases we have, and the less of a stranglehold on our health and our lives that the big food, big pharmacy, and the medical establishment will have on our lives, and we'll just be able to be healthy and enjoy our lives, which is the whole point of living in the first place.
Yep. So pretty much just stop taking poison, and then you should be good.
Don't eat poison.
I personally,
if you break it down to a bumper sticker, it would be that. Don't eat poison. Yeah.
I personally don't see how doctors that see those kinds of researches and information available today, I don't see how they see this, and then they just like, well, that might be just a fad or something like that. Like, if you're a doctor, just go ahead and look at all the available evidence, and it should be clear. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I can see as clear as 1 + 1 is 2 that this is the right thing to do. I can see it, and that's why I've been posting online, and I've received over 20 or 25 depositions or saying stop taking my medicine. I don't see people. I don't tell people to do the carnivore diet because I'm not a doctor or anything like that. But I tell my experience, and I've stopped taking Vyvanse, which is like a ADHD drug, because I could not concentrate. After 2 weeks on the carnivore diet, boom, no more medicine, nothing at all. And that's what I tell people. I've received a lot of messages from people saying, oh, my reflux is gone. I've been taking medication for 25 years and it has stopped. And I tell my fiance, look, this is the future, because she's about to become a doctor. She's graduating in like 6 months. And I tell her, this is the future. So, look at that, and I see. I like medicine. I'm not a doctor, but I like medicine. So I see like all her like questions, her studying for the tests, and then I'm like, let me answer those questions. And then it's like, a patient has this and this and this. What's the medicine that you should? What's the medicine you should prescribe to him? I'm like, that is wrong. Tell him to stop eating poison, and then he should be good if he has diabetes. But I bet you see people with a lot less severe diseases, like autoimmune diseases that like shed weight and their vision gets better. Because I've heard that. Do you see that as well? Just really quickly.
I mean, like things like diabetic retinopathy, macular degeneration. These are things I've spoken to a number of ophthalmologists, and they're treating these conditions with, ketogenic, animal-based ketogenic diets like a carnivore, and sometimes even the carnivore diet, which is the most pure, raw, whole form of a ketogenic diet, and then you can sort of add other things in. But I think you're totally right. This is the future of medicine. I mean, this is how you're going to treat that 90% of of issues that we are facing. It's the only way to treat them. The other thing we're doing is just pasting over the symptoms. That's not treating anything. That's a cop out. That's just kicking the can down the road. That's not actually doing anything about it. So the future of medicine is lifestyle based, and that was actually Edison said that like 100 years ago. He said the doctors of the future were going to be treating patients with what was his quote? But it was basically like they were going to be treating patients with lifestyle and food and diet and lifestyle sort of interventions are going to be the future of medicine. And the pharmaceutical industry just got in the way of that and became the overarching way that we treated patients for about 100 years. But it's coming back, and I think we're coming back to where we want to be. And so I think this really is the future of medicine, because it's the only way to actually treat this stuff. And so we'll get rid of that. But then what happens? What happens when we educate people and then you don't have these diseases anymore? Right? You go back to that 10% of stuff, the accidents and emergencies, the traumas, the labor and childbirth and pregnancies, the infectious disease, the snake bites, and the heavy metal poisonings, actual poisonings that aren't stupid food related, all these sorts of things. That's still 10% of medicine. That's what medicine has been since the entire existence of humanity, except when we were eating garbage. And you actually go back to ancient Egypt, and they had something called the Ebers Papyrus. So this is when they're eating a lot of grains, a lot of pressed seed oils, and a lot of beer. They were drinking a lot of alcohol and beer specifically. And their statues actually showed guys with beer guts and man boobs.
Boobs,
Yeah, and the man boobs. And that was in their statues. You look at the Greek statues; they're just shredded, And but the Egyptians were just big fat guys. And the Ebers Papyrus was a medical text, and it actually described diabetes, and the symptoms that someone would get before they died of a heart attack, and Alzheimer's, right? That's what comes when you eat this crap. And they even said there's an ancient Egyptian proverb that went, half of what you eat feeds you, the other half feeds your doctor. Is the food was causing your illness and you had to go to the doctor, right? So I think this is a future of medicine, but hopefully in the coming decades, and I'm being realistic there, it's probably going to take decades before we really get this across the world. And that's if we do, and I hope we do. I think we will, because the cat's out of the bag. There's too many people that are doing this and doing so much and just doing so well with it that I think this is going to really get where we want it to go. Let's say that we get rid of this, and then that 10% of issues, of the real issues that are unavoidable, that those become now 98% of what we treat. That's the next future of medicine, right? Because the nutrition side of things is just like everyone should just know that, especially doctors. But then what do we need doctors for? Because you don't need a doctor to tell you what I'm telling you, that we should just eat ancestrally, you should eat a proper diet. Once we figure out what the hell a proper diet is, and you just eat that, you don't need doctors to tell you that. You don't need a medical degree to know that. In fact, a medical degree expressly hinders you from understanding that, because they don't teach you that. They teach you like your fiance, like, here's a problem, here's a pill. Match the problem with the medication. That's what they teach, right? Because the curriculum is dictated by the pharmaceutical companies. That's not real medicine. So when you get away with that, and you get away from that, and people are just healthy again, and they just understand how important eating real food is, and then you come in and say, oh, you're having this problem. Hey, you really need to just cut out the salads and things. I know you like them, but no, just really go back to eating steaks. So you can tell them that, but the majority of things are going to be accidents, emergencies, traumas, pregnancy and childbirth, congenital and genetic issues, and infectious disease, things like that. That's the next step. So I'm already thinking, okay, well, what if I win? What if I get my way and everyone gets healthy and they don't need the medical establishment to treat these non-communicable chronic diseases? What do I do then? Because I'm not going to be out there just, hacking out brain tumors and cancers and all these sorts of things. Hopefully, that will be a very, very minor part of medical practice. What's next? It's traumas, right? So I'm thinking, okay, what do I want to do? Well, I really am interested in cancer and treating cancer and doing tumor resections, but I want there to not be so many anymore. And so I'll know how to do them for, maybe there's going to be decades left of these things. They're going to crop up. But hopefully, eventually, it really gets back to that being the minority of things, and we get back to dealing with traumas. And so that's what I want to make sure that I'm up on, is the traumas, the spinal traumas, the head traumas, and be really top notch at the emergency critical care trauma side of things, because eventually I want there to not be so much cancer and chronic disease that we have to treat all this crap all the time. And hopefully we get there. So, for your girlfriend or your fiance too, maybe that's what she should think of as well. This is the future. She could go in this. She could probably spend the next 20 years of practice just doing this. But maybe there's something after that. And so maybe she has something else that she does that deals with trauma, that deals with pregnancy and childbirth and those sorts of things as well. And so you're actually treating the real things that you actually need doctors for. Because this, you just need a butcher. That's all you need. You don't need a doctor. You need a rancher. But there are some things that you actually need doctors for. And so that's what I try to focus on in my own, skill set, and what I encourage young doctors to think about as well.
Thank you so much for this advice. I think she's thinking about doing endocrinology, actually. But I'll tell her to watch this interview. Yeah.
Well,
I'll tell her to watch this interview with you.
Well, the thing is that she does go in endocrinology. I mean, it would still be practical, because she'll actually be able to fix all the problems that endocrinology tends to sort out. Now, there's actual real things in endocrinology. You do someone has a pituitary tumor and you remove that, it disrupts the pituitary and the hormones that come out of that. You need an endocrinologist to make sure that they have a proper hormonal balance after the surgery. Most of what they do is diabetes. The vast majority of what they do is diabetes clinics, because that's just the vast majority of the burden out there. So she could do that, but she could actually do it for real. And she could put people on a proper diet and actually reverse and get rid of diabetes. And she would be extremely successful. It's not like the model where, no, we want people keep coming back. I heard something that I heard this secondhand, because if I heard it firsthand, I probably would have knocked the guy out. There was a talk in England, in London, at the Public Health Collaboration. There was talking about cholesterol and heart disease, and they were talking about preventative cardiology and trying to prevent heart disease. And one of the guy he was the moderator of the panel, very nice guy. He was a cardiologist, interventional cardiologist, and he's all about preventative medicine, trying to prevent heart disease. And he said that it's not really all that interesting. People aren't really all that interested in it. And he talked to his colleagues like, well, how do we prevent this? How do we stop this? Because it's just going up and up. It's just getting more and more prevalent. More people are having first-time heart attacks. And he was saying that he said that to one of his colleagues and said, we have to think about prevention and preventing things. And he's like, why would I want to prevent heart disease? I love heart disease. That's what pays my bills. It's just like, I don't want to prevent heart disease. I want there to be heart disease. Absolutely disgusting. I mean, that guy deserves to lose his license and his teeth, probably in reverse order. Lose his teeth and then his license, because how sick do you have to be to wish illness, heart disease, and heart attacks on people so that you can make more money? Honestly, you have certain people on your blacklist that you're just like, okay, if I ever get an opportunity, that dude's in trouble. And that guy made my list, unfortunately for him. So that's sick to me. That's truly sick. But your girlfriend can actually prevent it. Can actually go in there and actually cure diabetes. It just goes away. Virta Health in America has cured over 25,000 type 2 diabetics, gotten them off medications completely just with diet and lifestyle interventions, right? 25,000. There's another group, I forget the name, in America, done over 35,000, right? So this works, and this is published that it works, and in experimental human trials, right? So it works. And so she could do that, and she could reverse these things, and all her colleagues that are just like, oh yeah, diabetes clinic, oh, it's booming, business is booming. She would have more business, but she'd be doing more good because people would learn about her. And so she'd have higher turnover, and people would get better, and then they'd go away. And that's the business model. That's what my business model is in my practice. I tell people, I want to get you healthy to the point that you don't need me anymore, and you don't need doctors outside of an emergency, right? That's my business model, is to get you healthy and get you home. You know what that does? It's like a hydra. Every person that you fix and send home and doesn't need you anymore, 2 of their friends are coming in, 2 of their family members, and then 2 of their friends, a bunch of their friends and their family members, and it just snowballs. We have no advertising. We do no advertising. And yet we are constantly full, and we have a backlog on patients trying to become new patients. And we can't see them all. We're just stuffed. And that's because everyone comes in. My sister came and saw you. My dad came and just see you. My husband, my wife, my sibling, my whatever came to see you, and they had such good results, and I wanted to come in as well. And so it just goes by word of mouth, and that would work for your sister. That would work for any clinician. People think, oh, if you cure them, then it just goes away, and oh, we don't have business anymore. There are enough sick people out there, and when they start finding out that there's a doctor that's actually fixing people, not just perpetuating their disease so that they can live with a disease, which is no life at all, they come to you. And so you'll be very successful, very popular, and very helpful. And that's the most important thing. You'll actually be a doctor. You'll actually be a doctor worthy of the name, because you'll actually be helping people and fixing people and curing people, which used to be the point and purpose of doctors, was try to cure diseases. We haven't cured shit in decades, It's just because the model is different. Now it's a product development model. We want to develop more products so we can sell more products. Goldman Sachs, actually, someone leaked one of their slides from a presentation from a meeting that said, is it a viable business model to cure someone of disease? And the answer was no.
I saw that.
Yeah, because if you cure them, you get the treatment once and then it's gone. But if you perpetuate the disease and you just treat the symptoms, then you're selling them these medications for the rest of their life. And so you have a customer for life, right? And so, fine, that to me is evil, but I understand their motivations, fine. So we can understand that and just understand that they are not going to be looking for a cure. Cure is never going to come in a pill form, because the pill form is to treat the symptoms, not the problem. Now, some of those pills are actually very helpful. Antibiotics, hormone replacement. If you lose your thyroid, you need that. You need that hormone. And so there are real, very valuable uses for medications. The vast majority are unnecessary. The vast majority. And so we just need to understand that. And so we need to take it on ourselves to look for the cures. We look for the underlying cause. They're not going to be looking for it. And so I think we found it in the food, and so we just need to do it that way. They're not going to do it for us. We need to do it ourselves, but the clinicians can do it, and you'll be actually much more successful as a clinician. We're busier now than ever because it works. What we do works, and so more and more people want to come in, and if your girlfriend does that, there are interesting things in endocrinology. You don't get to do much with it, though. You learn all this really cool stuff about the body and the organs and the systems and how they work together, and you never do it because they're so bloody rare. But what's not rare? Diabetes. It's there all the time. And so that's what they treat. It's always diabetes clinics now. But she could actually cure them and then actually be a real endocrinologist and a real doctor. And hopefully that's the road she goes down.
Yeah, I think so too. She hasn't studied the the carnivore diet or any ketogenic diet, for example, in extent yet, but I know she's going to, because I'm by her side every day. And
Yeah.
I've told her two things. Yeah, if you go down this path, you're gonna change so many lives. That's one. And the second thing is, there's no way our sons will not be on a carnivore diet. They gotta achieve their maximum potential, the maximum genetic potential. She's like, no. I'm like, yes. So
Yep.
those are the two things that I've been telling her. And
Nice.
she's actually going to the U.S., so she's doing the steps.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, nice.
and it's gonna be
Yeah.
nice for her to practice there. And Dr. Chaffee, thank you so much for your time today. Your information is very valuable. You've changed my life, and I know you've changed so many other people's lives. And I do hope, I honestly do hope to meet you someday in person,
Yeah.
to just
Yeah,
thank you and take a picture with you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thank you so much, and have a good one.
Thank you. Not a problem. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.